Can you hear me now? Okay, awesome. All right, so thank you so much for having me, guys. And yeah, I have this knack for finding adventures, or maybe adventures have a knack for finding me. I'm not quite sure which one it is yet, but you guys all know what an adventure is, right? It's a nasty, wet, uncomfortable thing that makes you late for dinner, for those of you who have read J.R.R. Tolkien. So that's definitely my personal definition for what an adventure is. And I seem to find these things all the time. In fact, if I don't find one in, a year goes by and something's not happening, I'm like, what's going wrong? Like, there's not an adventure going on right now. So one of the many adventures is I spent about 6 years trying to get my business to go full-time, and got out of the military. I worked a part-time job, or it was a full-time job, but just a 9-to-5, so that when I got off work, I could work on the business. Got it going. I was finally right at the point where I quit my job, had the full-time business, was taking care of the family. The wife I'd been married to for 17 years gets up and leaves, takes the kids with her, and 2 years into our separation, as if that wasn't fun enough, I'm training a law enforcement agency in Mississippi. I'm integrating a K-9 into their SWAT team with a buddy of mine. He's teaching SWAT tactics. I'm doing the K-9 integration. And the sheriff says, hey, before you guys leave, come on in. I need to talk to you. There is a warrant for your arrest because your wife said you had a bomb and we're going to blow people up. So she went and found my dog scent, my K-9 explosive scent, and said I had a bomb. And so spent 3 months in jail. The family court gives her all of my possessions because she was a partner in the business. Don't make that mistake. And then I get out. All my clients they don't know what the hell's going on. All my dogs are gone. I got to figure out how to get all of them back. And the only thing I get in the business is the names, website, stuff like that, which is valuable though. And within 3 years, I rebuilt that business to be more profitable than it was before the whole situation started. So this is kind of the process that I used to figure out how the heck to put a life back together when something like that seems to happen and everything seems to fall apart. And so that's kind of what we're going through here. But one thing that's really important to remember, and I didn't have this statement in my mind when I was going through this, but listening to guys like Jordan Peterson over the years has really kind of ingrained this, is that remember, every adventure is a problem, or every adventure or problem is an opportunity in disguise. The way Jordan puts it is, every dragon has a treasure, but every treasure has a dragon. And you've got to be able to overcome that dragon to get that treasure if you want it. And so here's kind of the process. And I normally have this sitting in front of me, so I apologize if I'm going to be glancing behind me a lot. And you guys get to see this is how I organize my thoughts in bullet points, so that when I do go off on tangents, which I tend to do, I can be like, where the hell am I supposed to be at? And I can glance back up and be like, oh yeah, that's what I'm supposed to be talking about right now. All right. So one of the problems with problems is the problem of misidentifying the problem. And what I mean by that is a lot of times something happens in our lives and we're like, oh no, I have a problem. And you say, what's your problem? And whatever in your mind the problem is, that's not the actual problem. The actual problem is something else. And even when we do identify the problem is we focus on the problem instead of focusing on the solution. So step one in problem solving, and this is going to be a loop, right? So this problem solving and planning for success is a loop, because as you're going through your plan for success, you're going to constantly encounter problems. And every time you encounter a new problem, you have to start the problem solving process over again and then readjust your plan and your like what it is you're doing to pursue your goals so that you can get around that problem and keep moving forward. So step one, we got to properly identify what the problem is. A guy I used to listen to all the time when I was first getting into business used to say that his father would tell him, if you don't know where you're going, any train will get you there. So we have to have a clear idea of what it is we actually want to do. And then we need to take a look at the problem, and most of us don't want to look at the problem because problems are very uncomfortable to look at, right? And so we have to stop. We have to do the really, really uncomfortable work of looking at the problem because, by the way, most of the time, these problems, they're our fault. We created them somehow. We didn't do something we were supposed to do, or we did something we weren't supposed to do, or we just ignored something that shouldn't have been ignored until it was too late. That's the story of the little baby dragon that the little boy kept telling his parents was in the house. And they kept saying, no, there's no dragon in the house. And the little dragon kept eating food in the house, and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it was bigger than the house. And then the parents had a problem that they couldn't deal with because now they let the dragon get too big, right? So we have to be willing to look the problem square in the eyes and identify, yes, this is a problem, and oh, by the way, this is my fault. And you can spend time thinking, what did I do to get there? Sometimes that can be helpful because we can avoid doing it again, right? But the big problem or the big takeaway from this is, don't focus on the problem. You have to identify it, but then the next step is you have to figure out what the solution is. What do you actually want to do, right? When I would ride mountain bikes, I learned really fast, if you focus on not hitting trees, you hit trees. Because your brain doesn't have the ability to negative focus on things. It only focuses on things. So you go, don't hit trees, and your brain goes, trees, got it. And that's all you can see is trees. Whereas if you go, stay on the path, your brain goes, look, there's paths everywhere. And then the trees become a lot easier to avoid because you're not focusing on the trees. You're focusing on where you want to go and what direction you want to take. So what does the solution look like? We have to identify, where is it I want to go? What is it I want to do? Not what do I not want to do or where do I not want to go? It's where do I actually want to go with this? And then that starts to give us a direction that we can start brainstorming for. And so the next step is we start brainstorming, how do I get to where this solution is? Now, it's really, really important to understand how perception works. And when I first realized this, it was pretty awesome, but we're going to go through some of the problems that it creates too. So here's how perception works. Your brain's job is to help you ignore 99% of everything that's around you. Because if you focused on everything you could focus on in this room, you would be completely overwhelmed and not able to do anything. Every little tiny speck in the concrete, every little thing that's in the room, every person that's sitting there, every little hair that's out of place or in place, you can focus on an infinite number of things around you, and almost all of them are completely irrelevant and don't do you any good at all. So we have to understand how perception works. As soon as you identify the solution, which is why we don't focus on the tree, we focus on the path. As soon as you identify the solution, your brain starts dividing things up into categories. And the primary categories that your brain divides things up into is things that help you get toward your goal. So those are going to be friends and tools. Things that are going to get in the way. So those are going to be adversaries, and they're going to be things like obstacles that are in our way. And then everything else gets ignored. Those are the three categories that your brain starts dividing things into. So we have to give ourselves an aim so that we know what to focus on. And then we get these divisions that are here. Okay. Now, when I first discovered this, I was like, superpower. Holy crap. I actually focused on a solution, and all I see are ways to get to that solution. The problem is most of those things won't work, and or most of those things are a waste of your time. Right? You do a thing, it makes you feel accomplished for a minute, and then you look and you go, but I'm really not any closer to my goals. So the next thing I ended up having to do is I had to say, okay, what do I do first? Right? Because there's an infinite number of things that I can now focus on, but all of them look to me like they're the way. There's a path, there's a tool that I can use, there's a person that can help me. All these things look awesome, but I had to start narrowing these things down into things that are actually useful, right? So how do we organize this newfound perception? Well, in my world, what I started doing is I go, there's some really, really important questions that we need to ask ourselves so that we can start doing the work of taking this newfound wonderful thing that just popped into our brain, all these different options that are out there, and get to the ones that are actually going to work. So number one is I ask myself, what things have to be done? So if I want to get there, what do I have to do to get there? If I don't have to do it, it doesn't need to be done right now. Because there's lots of things that looked like things that would take me in that direction. That looked a lot more fun than the things that I had to do to get there. And if you're not really careful, you'll go do the fun things because those are enjoyable. And then 2, 3, 6 months in, you realize I'm still not any closer to my goal because I haven't been doing the things that I have to do. And it's literally only the things that must be done for that success. That's the first place you focus when you have a problem. All right. Then the next thing is, what order do these things need to be done in? So sometimes you can do things in, you have a bunch of different options in order, and it doesn't make that big a difference if you do this one first or that one first. Other times, if you do this before you do that, it will not work. You have to do certain things in order, and you need to start identifying those things. So if I want to climb a mountain, I can't start halfway up the mountain. I'm way down here on the bottom, and I have to start down there, and I have to work my way up before I get to the first base camp and the second base camp and the third base camp, and then I make the summit, right? So we have to start identifying, are some of these things critical to be done in a specific order so that I can start actually plotting this course to move forward. And then there's going to be some of those things in there that you identify. They have to be done, and some are going to be a little bit of work for a lot of success, and other things are going to be a lot of work for a little bit of success. And sometimes we need that motivation. We're working, and we kind of feel like we're starting to get into a rut, and we need to go, what's one of these things that needs to be done that I can do quickly, that I also get big bang for my buck in? I can go do that thing. I can get that big boost of positive emotion, and then that gives me the motivation to go back in and doing these things we don't want to do. Because there's going to be tons of these things that are necessary and have to be done, but we don't want to do them. They're no fun. They're hard work. I have to wake up early. I have to work late. I have to do this physical thing that I don't want to do, and it's hard. There's lots and lots of things that are going to come up. So we need to have this list that helps us break these things down into categories. So here's my problem. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I need to do X today. I get X knocked out and I'm like, awesome. It's only like noon and I got X knocked out. But I didn't plan for finishing X at noon. And then I walk around going, oh, what do I do now? Oh, look, a thing I can do. And I go do 2 or 3 other things for the rest of the day. The end of the day comes along. I go up and I finally sit down and relax for the evening. And I'm like, shit. I should have done these other 3 things. That would have actually been helpful. So having this stuff written down so that you can go, you finish one and you go, what do I do next? Well, you go look at your list. That's what you do. And then that's like, boom, there it is. That's what I do next. I really like a journal that it actually plays off your 3 things, Nicole. And it actually gives you 3 things that have to be done for today to be successful. And you do that first thing in the morning. You may not get to number 2 and 3 that day, but you actually have a list of things so that as soon as you finish one thing, you go, what do I do next? The other thing to be really cautious of falling into, I really like the idea of, I think they call it block timing, but I set up, so here's what would happen early on. I need to build a website. So what am I going to do today? I'm going to build the website. But I don't know how to build a website. I'm not really that good at it. I'm working on WordPress, and I got to figure out how to change this label on this page to this color. And it takes me 6 hours to figure out where that setting is to change that one thing to that color. And then I didn't get anything else done that day. So what I like to do is go, I'm spending 2 hours on the website today. You set a timer. You work for 2 hours, whatever you get done gets done, and then when that timer goes off, what's the next thing on the schedule? I'm shifting into that thing, right? And so then you start to learn to be efficient with your time, and then at the end of each day, it goes, what went right today? You write down what went right, and then it goes, what did not go right today? And you start learning real quick, I thought these things would be a lot faster than they are, and I'm adding way too much of those in, and I think I can get more done in a day than I can. And I thought these things would take longer, but I get them done way faster, and you start learning which things to put in which places so that you don't get bogged down in that 6-hour website design when you were only needed to spend an hour and a half on it. And then you also know if I start saying I'm going to do these things, I'm not done at noon with nothing else to do for the rest of the day, right? So that kind of planning process worked really, really good for me. But you got to get your plan started, and then you have to be ruthless, and you have to do this over and over and over again because you'll constantly want to fall back into those things that sound fun but aren't all that productive. You have to be ruthless in cutting out the pet projects that we get emotionally attached to but are not the things that are actually taking us to our goal. All right, so the emotional aspect there becomes really critical. Now, from my perspective, these are things that cause really big hangups for people, and they're things that have been really useful to me in the past. So we need to understand and accept how our emotions work. And I didn't understand this, but once I did, and once I realized it, I was like, holy crap, this is another superpower once you realize how this works. Positive emotion is literally how your body tells you that you're moving toward a goal. Now, the problem is a lot of people don't have very established goals, and so they get all these little micro things, and they're looking for all these little dopamine hits by getting on social media. And, oh, look, 10 people liked my post today, or I'm hungry, let me get ice cream instead of something that's good for me, right? But when you start actually setting bigger goals, and then you identify, I just made a big step toward that goal, your body says, yes, you did, dopamine hit, positive emotion. So your positive emotions can tell you, yes, I'm moving toward the goals, if your aim is set. If your aim is not set, you'll get all these weird feedbacks that aren't actually taking you toward your goal. But the opposite side of that is negative emotion. So there's two primary negative emotions. One, I feel bad, but the other one, and this is the one I experience the most, is anxiety. All of a sudden you're like, why am I feeling anxiety? So anxiety is literally your body is saying, entropy has increased. Entropy is basically chaos, right? I don't know what to do here. So a good example of this that's pretty easy to recognize is you're driving to work in the morning. Everything's going good. This is my schedule. I drive to work every morning. I know what's going to happen today. I'm going to get into the office. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to take lunch. I'm going to go home this evening, blah, blah, blah. And you get a flat tire. Boom. Anxiety, entropy. Now we don't know where the day is going to go. How long is it going to take to fix this tire? Am I going to have to do other things to get this tire fixed that's going to take away from other things I want to do? All of a sudden, all these open pathways open up that weren't things that we wanted to do, that in our brain right now go, this is not taking me in the direction I want to go for my goal, anxiety. Right? So whenever you start feeling anxiety, normally what that means is you're not clearly laying out your path. Right? You're not stopping and thinking. So whenever I start to feel anxious, I go, stop. Where am I trying to go to? How do I get there? And then even just having 2 or 3 things that will start moving you back in that direction, the anxiety goes way, way down. And then step 4, understand that sometimes plans have to pause to accommodate real life. So this is where people are trying to like build a business, or they're trying to do something, and all of a sudden they're like, oh no, I have to quit my goals because I got to go get a part-time job to make the mortgage payment and feed my family. That's okay. Sometimes you have to do that. It's not the most pleasant thing in the world, but obstacles and problems throughout this process are just a part of the process. All right? And once we have all that fairly well understood, then we go, now it is time to start laying out as detailed a plan as I can lay out. Now, here's the problem. You think you're going there. And so you start laying out your plan to get there. But after you take 10 steps in that direction, you realize, oh, hang on, I'm actually going over there. And you've got to readjust so that, because you don't know where you actually want to go. You only think you know where you want to go. And you're only going to realize more and more detailed in as far as what exactly am I trying to accomplish here as you move forward. And so a lot of people get frozen, not moving at all, or they get locked in. This was my problem early on too. You get locked into a thing and things start changing and you don't adjust. And then all of a sudden you're 6 months or a year down the road and you're like, how the hell did I end up here? Like I wanted over there. Oh wait, no, I thought I wanted here in the beginning, but then all these things changed and I didn't readjust my aim. So then you have to be open to making adjustments to this as you go. Sometimes an obstacle says you actually need to change direction and go that way. And sometimes an obstacle is I just need to go around this obstacle and then get back on track. But it's your job to constantly be evaluating that. One of the things that really helps me, I was in the Army. And so we learned a thing in the Army called the military decision-making process. So as a young officer, one of the first things you learn is how to write an operations order. And then you kind of expand that out to the military decision-making process, which is how to tell all the people below you how to write their operations orders. But one of the most important things in an operations order is the commander's intent. Now, the commander is always supposed to put a commander's intent in an operation order because no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Right? So as soon as your soldiers are out there trying to execute your operations order and they run into an obstacle, they have to be able to make decisions that are going to still accomplish the mission, but they're not going to be able to come back to you every time it happens and go, sir, this one little thing happened out here. Like, should we assault that building or not? So a commander's intent gives the broad goal of where am I going? What's my purpose? So that when you do have to adjust, you don't end up out in left field somewhere. And so it's really encompassing the why of what it is you're trying to do. Why are you doing? One of the worst things that can happen to you is you're moving forward in your objectives. You're starting to press toward your goal. And then things get a little bit hard. And one day you stop and you go, why am I doing this? That is a really bad time to be asking why you're doing this. You want to figure out the why way as soon as you start making this plan. Because then when you run into those hardships and those things that slow you down and the things that get you all, broken down and you want to quit, you go, no, I'm not quitting because I know why I'm doing this. I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm not giving up. So my commander's intent, the thing that got me through that whole divorce process and everything, and don't think I didn't question this. Sometimes you give these talks and it's like, oh yeah, that was just that easy process. No, there were times literally where I was laying face down on the floor, frozen, didn't know what the hell to do. But I picked myself up and I said, what is it I want to do with my life? And this is my commander's intent. I am a dog man. I raise and train my dogs to take care of my family by serving our clients with the best trained dogs we can produce. That's my life. That's what I do. And sometimes I talk to people and they're like, really? That's what you want to do? I'm like, you could give me $10 million tomorrow and that's what I'd be doing. That's my life purpose right there. That's what I love doing. I tried not to do it over and over again and I kept coming back to it. And I just decided, stop fighting it. That's what you do. That's who you are. So you have to figure out what's your commander's intent. What's your why behind what you're doing. Now you lay out the process in as much detail as you can, but don't get too far ahead of yourself. I like detailed plans about 3 months out. That's another reason I really like these little journals. And if you guys want, I'll look up what they're actually called and give you the information for them. There's 3 or 4 different companies out there that make them. But one journal is 13 weeks. 13 weeks is a quarter of a year. So a quarter is not actually 3 months. It's 13 weeks. And so this journal takes you through one quarter. Well, each time you start a new journal, you write the goals for that quarter. And so it's good to have like a 5-year plan and it's good to have a 1-year plan. But for executing now in the moment, 3 months out. And then at 3 months, I can evaluate what did I accomplish? What did I not accomplish? Make my adjustments. Next quarter's goals, go. So try to lay out your plan in as much detail as possible. You're using the answers to the questions that we started off with to figure this out, right? What has to be done? What order do they have to be done in? And what gives me the biggest bang for my buck? That's I found the best way to actually figure out what it is that I need to do as I start doing these things. Start taking action immediately. Do something. You talk about this all the time, Jack, when you're talking about building businesses and getting things done, is if you just go, oh yeah, this all sounds great. Maybe next month I'll start doing something for it. You'll never get it done. Yep. Every time you delay even a day, you make procrastination easier. Every time you give it, and it happens. It's not like, oh, we're perfect. We do it every day. No, I'll go 2 or 3 weeks and then I'll be like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I got to get back on track here. Come on. And then boom, we jump into this, right? So none of this is perfect. You fall off the wagon, you get back up, you start the process again. This is a constant cyclical process that you just go through over and over and over again. Discipline and consistency are key. I tell my clients with dog training this all the time. You want a disciplined dog? Be a disciplined person. You want a dog to be consistently obedient? Consistently correct or praise your dog. If you're consistent and disciplined, your dog will be. If you're consistent and disciplined, you'll build the life that you want to build. But you have to keep that going.
And CC's on your couch.
That could happen. So the other thing is, and this is coming back to those journals, establish a daily schedule and routine. Now your schedule can be Mondays I do this, Tuesdays I do that, something like that. Or it could be every day I do this. My schedule tends to be every day I do these things, and then during this time, this is my flex time. I can put other tasks into these other time frames. But every day I get up and I do a certain thing in the morning. Every day I go work out. Then I go and I train my dogs for a period of time. Then my afternoon is, okay, do I need to go do taxes today? That sucks, but okay, it needs to get done. Do I need to go build some obstacles? Do I need to reach out and communicate with clients? Do I have something on my website that's not working? That's when those other tasks get done, and that might change every single day. But that morning routine, that first half of the day, is the same for me every single day. There was a meme I found on Instagram that said, you do not rise to your goals. You fall to the outcomes of your daily schedules and habits. And that is so true. That's happened to me over and over and over again. When my daily habits are rock solid, I'm making progress forward. When I start getting lax on them and I start, I can sleep in a little bit today, or, I did that, or maybe I had an extra drink last night I shouldn't have, got a little bit of a hangover this morning, I'll take it. Nope. Every time you do that, you start falling farther and farther behind. So what you do every day will determine where you end up. And then you're going to have to adjust your plans and your paths to new circumstances. Things are going to constantly be evolving. Like we said, you think you're going there, but now you got to go there. Or you think you're going in that direction and you hit a roadblock that it says, no, you can't go that way. You have to shift over here, right? So we have to constantly be willing to make these adjustments. So we're back up at the beginning, right? Because this means we hit a problem. So the problem, now we start the problem solving process again. Where do I want to go? What are the things that have to get done? What order do they have to get done in? And what gives me the biggest bang for my buck? So that's why this becomes a loop, right? This becomes a thing that we just do over and over and over again. You have to understand that failing is part of the process, right? I often use this analogy. So I used to be training with a buddy of mine, Rich Graham. He was a Navy SEAL. And awesome guy. And I would handle a lot of his admin stuff for a while. And people would always call up and they would want to have a knife defense course. All these people wanted a knife defense course. And you talk to them for 5 minutes and you realize you don't want a knife defense course. What you want to know is, how do I defend myself against somebody with a knife and not get cut? You don't. That's not how defense works. If you're in a fight, you're getting punched. If they have a knife, you're getting cut or stabbed. You have to stack the odds in your favor so that even if they present those things, I either have better tools than you do, or I can at least survive this, but I'm going to take some injuries in the process, right? So you're going to take hits. You're going to hit obstacles. People that you relied on are going to let you down, so be careful who you rely on. But this stuff is going to happen, and if you go into a thing and it's all going to be smooth sailing, you're just going to be disappointed. I have this somewhere in here, but there's a, I think it was Jordan or somebody else was talking about this, but nobody goes to a movie where the hero of the movie sets this lofty goal, and then he just goes and does it, and there's no problems. We're like, that's boring. The reason it's boring is because that's not how real life works. We want to be inspired because we all know we're going to hit all those roadblocks. We want to see somebody hit big, gigantic roadblocks, get knocked down. Oh, they're about to quit. And then they get the motivation and they get up off their butt and they go and they do something awesome, right? That's your life. This is your adventure. It's a nasty, wet, uncomfortable thing that makes you late for dinner. But at the end, you can conquer the dragon and get the treasure and be where you want to be in life. So another rule of thumb, and I just thought this was a good place to put this, is a slight aside. But sometimes we're going through, we're trying to accomplish things, and then we legitimately stop and go, is this really what I want to be doing? Right? Sometimes we have this goal, but we have never done anything like what that goal actually is. When I was in college, I thought, I want to be an architect. Architect, like buildings look pretty cool to me. I kind of like drawing stuff and designing things, and I built Legos when I was a kid. And then I went and worked with an architect for like 2 weeks and realized I do not want to be an architect, right? So sometimes we think we have this goal and we start moving towards it and we realize that doesn't look nearly as enjoyable as I thought it was going to look. I am not going to get satisfaction out of doing that. So when you change goals, this is not 100%, but it's a really good rule of thumb. If you're going to stop pursuing one goal, you're only allowed to do it if the next goal you're pursuing is harder than the one you were pursuing in the first place. That's how you know you're not just giving up and doing something easier. If you find something bigger and more meaningful and more important to you than the thing that you were pursuing, that's okay to quit pursuing that and to pursue the bigger thing. If you're just going into ease, if you're going into, oh, I just want the simple life, I don't want to do hard things anymore, you're probably selling yourself short, and 5, 10, 20 years down the road, you're going to be really, really sorry you did that. So that's my encouragement to, if you're going to shift to something that's harder. Persevere. So no starting off, this is going to be a hard road. Humans were not built for comfort. We were built for adventure. I think it was Nietzsche, which I'm not a huge fan of Nietzsche, but he had some really, really awesome wisdom that he put out there. And one of the things, I think it was him, but one of the things that was said is, if we actually created utopia, where the human species had nothing to do but lay around in warm, bubbling pools, eat grapes, and busy ourselves with the propagation of the species, we would tear it all down just so that something interesting would happen. The comfortable life is what most people are told to pursue. Get the job, work your 9 to 5, put your money in your 401k, have a good retirement, yay, good life. And how many of those people are happy with the life they're living? Not very many of them. That's the boring life. And then they look at people who are actually pursuing their goals and they go, you're so lucky. And you're like, yeah, spend a day in my shoes, buddy. Like, you want to experience all the crazy crap that I'm going through? But then I think about being in that life and I'm like, no, I'd kill myself. Like, I don't want to be there. I want to be where I am. But it's hard. And you got to keep getting up every day and problem solving and planning your future. So that was the quote for the movies that I mentioned. Nobody wants to go see a boring movie. You want to see an adventure. So the other important thing is we have to realize where we are. So this was something that my mentor in dog training used to go over and over and over again with. You are where you are. If you pretend you are somewhere you're not, you will never get to where you want to go. Because if you think you're over there and you're trying to plot a course that direction and you start moving in that direction, but really you're 15 feet over there, you're going in the wrong direction. You have to acknowledge where you're actually at. And a lot of times this is really demoralizing for us, right? Jordan Peterson has a story of a guy that he was in his mid-30s. He was still living with his parents. His room was a wreck. His life was a wreck. Nobody liked him, didn't have a job, and he was miserable. And he came to get some help. And Jordan said, okay, you're going to go home this week and you're going to clean your room. So he goes home. He gets the vacuum cleaner. He walks to his room. He looks at it. He leans the vacuum cleaner in the doorway and steps over the vacuum cleaner every day for the rest of the week and doesn't touch his room. He comes back next week and Jordan says, how'd you do? Put the vacuum cleaner in the middle of my doorway and stepped over it the rest of the week. That was too big a task for him to accomplish. He said, okay, I want you to organize your dresser. It's like, okay. He goes home. He opens his drawers. It's not even sock drawers. It's like socks and underwear and t-shirts and everything is in every drawer. Too much. Goes away, doesn't do anything. He comes back the next week and Jordan says, okay, organize one sock drawer. He goes home, he organizes one sock drawer. He can do that one. That's one he can actually accomplish because you can't pretend you're somewhere you're not, right? He got one sock drawer organized, but when he came back the next week, he didn't just have one drawer organized, he had 3. So then the next week he finished that and he got his closet organized. Because once you start actually moving in the direction you want to go, it snowballs, right? Because part of the problem is us figuring out how to actually organize our thoughts to be productive. And if you've never done it before or your life is too chaotic, you have to start at something really, really small. And that is really demoralizing because you're like, really? This is all I can do? I'm so pathetic that the only thing I can do is organize one sock drawer. But if you pretend that's not how pathetic you are, you're not going to get better. Yeah, you're that pathetic, but it's okay. Because if you do that, and then you do the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, in 5 years, you're going to be awesome. You're not really pathetic. You just don't know how to do shit yet. So you have to start doing something, but it has to be something you can actually do. So you have to recognize, this is where I am, and then you start working from there. No matter how small the first steps are, start taking them. And in 5 years, you won't believe what you've accomplished. All right, questions? How are we doing on time? I almost always go long. Like I try to. I'm trying.
So totally putting you after lunch next time because of the energy you brought.
Hey, I'm trying.
And there was some sleepiness.
I can appreciate that. I get sleepy after lunch.
There was a lot of gronking.
Well, I get really excited about this stuff. Like my specialty is teaching people to defend themselves with dogs. And so, and having a realistic perspective of fights, like we talked about with the knife, right? Like there's no right answers to everything. But this stuff is how I got that life. So whenever I talk to Nicole about talks and things like that at events, it's like, are we going motivational or are we going, let's kill people? Like, which one are we doing? I can do both. Yes.
Also,
and you can experience some of what our dogs can do. I have the bite suit, the full suit, and I have sleeves if you're too big for my suit. And we can deploy one or both dogs on you. I actually haven't deployed this pair together, so we can do an experiment. We can be like, all right, I don't have pants to wear right now, so I give you an 80% chance of coming out of a double dog deployment without leg bites. There's a 20% chance you'll get bit in the legs, but I only give you a 50% chance you won't be taken down to the ground. Yeah, that's right. All right, so questions on the motivational problem solving stuff. Yeah.
I don't have a question, but just a comment. You didn't say it directly, but I think it's really helped me in the past. You were talking about your commander's intent. I think what I really took away from that is you set what your identity, what you wanted your identity to be. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's a way easier thing to identify that with than
Yeah.
just actions. So I want to be this person.
Yeah.
And it just changes the way you think about everything.
Absolutely. One of the things that's been really, like when I look back on my kind of process, I can see that this was definitely true in my life. So there's a story in the Old Testament of Moses. Moses is the one that goes and frees the Israelites from the Pharaoh, and then they go into the desert for 40 years and they end up in the promised land, right? And everybody thinks, but I want to find my calling. I want to find the thing that identifies me as a person. What's my purpose in life, right? And you usually don't just find your purpose in life. Like sometimes, like there's an 8-year-old kid that's like, I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up. Like Ben Carson, right? Like he knew he wanted to be a doctor when he was 8 years old. And then what did he do? He went and he did it. And there were all these miraculous, great things along the way. Most people don't experience that. Most people are like, they graduate high school. They're like, I don't know what the hell I want to do. I guess I should go to college maybe. And so they go to college and they're like, I don't know what I should major in. That thing looks interesting, maybe, I guess. But what happens with Moses is Moses has a pretty chaotic younger life. Like he's raised in the Pharaoh's household, but he's a Jew. And so he's kind of like looked down on. And then he sees another Jew getting picked on by a Egyptian and he murders him. And then he's like, oh shit, I messed up. I better get the hell out of here or they're going to kill me. And so he runs off into the wilderness. He sees these 2 girls at a well trying to draw water for their sheep. And these guys come and they kind of push him away and they're real mean to him. And he comes and he defends them and he helps them. And then they run home to their dad and they're like, this guy helped us out. And he's like, where is he? They're like, I don't know. We left him at the well. He's like, go back and get that guy and bring him back here. So they go get him and they bring him back to their father. And he's like, you're awesome. We love you. You're taking care of our family. You should live with us and take care of our sheep too. He marries his 2 daughters. He's living a life. Now he's like middle-aged. He's a shepherd, which is a hard job in that day. When you have to fight off the bears and the lions and the wolves, you have sticks and stones. Literally, that's what they had to defend their sheep, right? These are pretty tough guys, but his life's going okay now. He's married. He's got some kids. He's got a job. Things are looking pretty good. And he's walking around one day and he's like, what's going on up on that mountain? Like, there's a fire up there. I better keep an eye on it. Maybe a couple hours go by and he's like, that fire's not spreading, but it's still burning right in that one spot. I think I'm going to go check that out. And he approaches and he gets closer and he gets closer. And all of a sudden he gets a command from God that he's going to do this massive thing. It's way bigger than he thinks he can do. He's like, no. I don't need to go. Like he's pretty smart, right? He's like, I don't need to go do that. That's way too big and way too dangerous. And God says, nope, you're doing it anyway. And then he goes forward and he goes through this wonderful grand adventure and he frees the Egyptians or the Israelites from Egypt and they eventually make it to the promised land. And he has lots of adventures along the way, right? That's how most of these callings work. You got to put your life together. You got to start having things working in a direction. You have to be somewhat functional before some grand plan is going to appear to you. If you're a 15-year-old kid, you're useless. Most of us at 30, we're still useless, right? It's like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do and I'm not even any good at anything. But you start getting good at something, and then something comes along that catches your attention, and you go, ooh, what's that thing? I want to go check that out more. It's exactly what happened to me. I was in the Army. My ex-wife was like, hey, when you're deploying, I want to have some security, so I want a dog. So we found this place that had these puppies, and the only reason we went with them is because for $3,000, I could get 1 puppy and 1 week of training, and everywhere else was $3,000 for a puppy. So I'm like, hey, I'll get a week of training out of this. That sounds like a good deal to me. I went up there and started training with these guys. And 2 days into the training, I'd looked at their website and stuff. And, they were doing things with like fire and smoke and water and all this cool stuff. And I'm a 20-year-old Army guy, right? So I'm like, this sounds exciting. And so we're sitting at the lunch table and I go, hey, Chief, that stuff about the fire and the smoke and the water? And the other 2 officers, so I was there the last week of a 6-week law enforcement training course. And I see them out of the corner of my eye, but I didn't really understand what they were doing. And I'm like, are we going to get to do any of that fun stuff? And they're like, shut up, stop talking. And Chief's getting like this little wicked grin on his face, right? He's like, oh, yeah. And he goes, all right, boys, at 8 o'clock tonight, you'll be on the field and you'll be cammied up. And so they're like, we're injured. And they both quit right off the bat. Nope, they're not participating in this. So I get out there with his son. I've got a 4-month-old German Shepherd male puppy. And the first thing he says is, see that pond? The pond's literally the size of this room. There's a little metal bridge that goes across it, and right over there is a bush that hangs out over the pond. That's the only bush that hangs out over the pond. Otherwise, you can just walk all the way around. And he goes, you're going to get in this pond. I'm going to walk over to that van and come back. If I find you, you're going to suffer. And, well, that's the only place to go. So, and it's me and his son. So he says, as soon as he turns and walks, his son's like, let's go. And so we jump in the water, we swim across with our dogs. We have to have our dogs with us. You do everything with your dogs there. And we get under this bush, and his son looks at me and goes, no matter what he tells you, do not get out of this pond unless I tell you. Because this was preempted, by the way. So Lieutenant Riles, because he was a MACV-SOG NCO. So, of course, I'm an officer. I'm target number 1 for him. And he's like, you want to learn what it's like to be a real dog man, huh? Well, if you quit on me tonight, you can never come back here ever again. Do you want to continue? And I was like, yes, Chief. He goes, you need to understand that if you quit, you will never set foot on this facility again. Do you want to continue? Yes, Chief. Into the water, right? So his son looks at me and says, don't get out no matter what unless I tell you it's okay to get out. So we spent 4 hours in a pond, and we were in Canada, and it was summertime, but the water's still like 68 degrees. And he's pissing on us. We got maced and pepper sprayed. We had to crawl out of the pond. Oh, and by the way, our dogs are with us this whole time, right? Little 4-month-old German Shepherd puppy shivering. It can't make waves, by the way. If it makes waves, we suffer. So you're like, easy, calm down. It's okay. There's crayfish in the pond, which is a fun little addition, because when you're sticking your arm in the mud so you don't drift out from underneath this bush, little crayfish are crawling up your sleeves and pinching you, and they're going up your pants legs and pinching you. And we spend 4 hours there. We go up at the end, and we have to complete a certain portion of the obstacle course. My poor little German Shepherd puppy keeps falling off. So like the third time he falls off and I catch him, he goes, lower the dog to the ground and finish without him. So I lower him down. I finish the obstacle course, and he just goes, see you in the morning, boys, and walked away. And I had some experience like that every time I went up there for the next 12 years. It was always some form of torture just to see if he could get us to quit. But that was the adventure. And as soon as I did that, there was nothing I could do but train dogs. I was like, everything in my life went, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. But it just happened that way. It's like things will come along and you're like, that's it. That's the thing. I'm pursuing it. And if you're committed to it and you solve your problems properly and you make the planning that it takes to get there, you can accomplish anything, but you're going to experience crap along the way. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
So everybody I know who's built success in their life, it's always been sort of a messy
Yes.
thing, maybe except for Jack.
Oh,
no, it's messy. But we always hear about the organized way you got there, which is how my 3 things works, right?
Yep.
Also, but everybody who we actually sit down and talk,
Yeah.
says, yeah, there was that 3-week period of time where I just stopped doing it completely and I couldn't focus, or I was laying on the ground and couldn't decide what to do next.
Yep.
How do we talk about that in a way that helps people understand that the biggest key to being successful is learning to forgive yourself and just move on?
Yeah,
Because
that's been one of the hardest things
Yeah.
for me to try and communicate too, because it's like you talk about the plan because you want to kind of motivate people, right? And
Yeah.
that is legitimately what I use to build the life that we've built at this point. But there have been setbacks where you literally go, seriously?
Yeah.
Like, again? I have to do this again? Seriously? And you're going along, and like, so you mentioned this right off the bat. After the divorce, I rebuilt my business. Well, we had a property that we were leasing that we built the business on, and I'd gotten it going again. Things were just starting to smooth out and settle out and get kind of comfortable, right? And then all of a sudden, yeah, we're putting the property up for sale. Okay, well, if you're putting it up for sale, I'd like to put a bid in on the property. Okay, well, they offered us $27 million. Never mind, because we're in the middle of Orlando. They're building an apartment complex on it. And so it's like, okay, got to readjust, got to do things. And you literally will have times when it feels like you've been kicked in the guts and stomped on the ground. And it sucks. It really, really sucks. And sometimes you do have to take that week and just go, holy crap. Like, I just need a week where I can breathe, because I feel like I can't even breathe right now. Sometimes you might need to take that short break. Go get the part-time job because something happened and all my revenue just dried up and I got payments to make and children to feed. Like, I got to do something, right? Now, my wife has been really proactive, and she started to establish her own. She works from home but can make some money on the side, and that really covers down when things get lean. I built Canine Academy, which is a subscription, an online training subscription that people sign up for so that I can bring in a little extra money. Because in dog sales, it's like this. I'll sell 3 dogs 1 month and it's like, woo, awesome. And I'll go 4 months with no dog sales, and then I'll sell 1, and then I'll go 2 months with no more sales, and then I'll sell 5. And it's like, can somebody explain to me where these sales come from so that I can even this out just a little bit. That would be really great. So over a year, I tend to average 8 to 12, trained protection dogs in a year. But literally, sometimes that happens in January, like it did the first year Biden was elected president. I was like, wow, that was really awesome. And then maybe like 2 more through the rest of the year. And sometimes, like when Trump gets in office and everybody goes, whoo, everything's fine. We're going to be okay now. Orange man got elected. And then it's like nobody wants protection dogs and nobody feels scared. And so then I sell puppies, right? So I tried to build out the 3 different revenue patterns, which is we breed our own dogs for the program. So we have puppies available for sale. But like while Biden was in office, I sold 6 puppies in 4 years. When Trump was in office, I averaged 60 a year. So like I don't run like a high volume breeding program, but I was getting so many reservations. I want a Dutch Shepherd. Okay, send in your deposit. I want a Malinois. Okay, send in your deposit. And once I had 6 or 7 reservations for a breed, I just do a breeding. And then that was happening so much those years that we were doing 7, 8 breedings a year. And then Biden gets elected and it's like, I want protection dogs. And I'm like, stop all puppy sales. Like we need dogs. And then we start training the protection dogs up and it shifts and we have these rotations. So it does help to have something built in there, some kind of passive income, a spouse that's making some extra money on the side, something like that. So that when things dry up temporarily, you can cover those bases. So you feel like you have a little bit more breathing room. The other thing I'd highly recommend is have savings of some kind. Have 3, at least 6 ideally months of being able to cover your business's expenses so that you're not panicking when you have those couple of months that are lean. You're like, hey, we're good. I got to keep pushing. I got to figure this out, but I don't have to panic because we have stuff sitting here that takes care of this process.
Well, the other thing is when you have a reset
like
that, look, either of your own making because you became lazy.
Yep.
Or had to, whatever. The successful people at some point say, this is what I'm going to do to get through this.
Yeah.
And then you push and you push and you push, you get through it. So you've had a total reset.
Yep.
And then you've built again. And then rug is ripped out from under you again. I had the hardest reset I've ever had last year. And so I'm in a rebuilding year this year, right? And what I realize is I'm like really not scared of rebuilding because I've had to rebuild so many darn times.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm like, it's going to rebuild to something.
Yeah.
And
well, one of the blessings I had,
had you not like been arrested and lost everything and rebuilt everything. And
well, so there's 2 aspects to that. One is I was really blessed because I started trying to build this business while I was on active duty in the Army. And so it was very, very small and very, very slow, but I would get something going. Anybody from the military in here? Okay, so there's a thing called a PCS. A PCS is a permanent change of station. But every 2 to 4 years, depending on the job you're in, they say, now you're going to this place. And you literally move your whole family and you go to some place new. And that's not counting deployments in between there. So I would just start to get a business rolling. It was mostly like clients coming in with dogs and training them and stuff like that. And then PCS, nobody. And I start building it up again, and then PCS, and then build it up again, and PCS. Now I had that income going on the whole time, but that really helped me learn how to do these resets over and over and over again. So starting small while you're still doing other things that are taking care of your family. I mean, it's not little work. It's a small business, right? But it's a lot of work. But doing that and figuring out your mistakes while you have something else, if you can persevere that long, can have a real beneficial aspect to it. But the only way I went full time was I literally got so sick of the job that I was in and they did something that just pissed me off. And I was right on the verge. Like, I'm like, we could take care of the family with what I'm making with this, but it'd be really tight. And so because I knew I had that option now, and they pissed me off like that 4th time, I just can't deal with it. The Army I did great in because I could tell my boss to fuck off, but I still did the job and they never fired me. I was just like, just fire me. And they're like, just go do it. And I'm like, okay. And I would go do it. And it always worked out great. In the civilian world, it didn't work that way at all. And so I got to a point where I literally just walked into my boss's office. I didn't talk to my wife about this, by the way. That's a big mistake. Yeah. But I literally walked into the office and I just went, And it's like, well, now it's make it or fail. Like, you don't have any backup plans anymore. They're all gone. This is all you got left. So you got to make it work. And there is that, build it on the side while you're working. And that definitely can work. But depending on how long it takes you to build it up, most people are not going to endure that long. And at some point, you just got to yank that rug out from underneath you. You got to burn the ships and go, there is no other option than making this work. And hunger and having to take care of a family is a really good motivator to get your ass up and work in the morning. And sometimes that's just what has to happen. And there's no comfortable way to do it, I don't think. But again, I mean, that's life, right? Like, we're so spoiled in our current culture that we just stop for 5 minutes and think about 100 years ago, what did they have to do to survive? Like, if you're lazy, you starve to death. End of story. You're gone. Your genes don't exist anymore. So that was their whole life. And then we're like, oh no, my latte's cold and I don't have Wi-Fi. What's going on? My life is terrible. And it's like, shut up and get to work. And sometimes you just have to have that attitude of just shut up and get to work. It's just a sheer determination that I'm laying on the floor. What am I doing down here? This isn't going to solve any of my problems. I just got to get up off my ass and go do something. And the crazy thing is, if you just do something, all of a sudden the next thing is something you can do. And then the next thing is something that you can do. And sitting, like what we talked about with, procrastinating and delaying and not doing anything makes the next procrastination easier. Getting up and doing something makes the next thing to do easier too. They both play. Now, the one is a little bit harder, but once you do one thing and you get that little dose of positive emotion that I did something, boom, that's the motivation to do the next thing and the next thing. And that's why it's so important to have some kind of a plan in place so that the things that you are doing and the progress you are making is actually giving you those hits of dopamine that keep driving you in the direction that you're going, so that you don't end up another month down the road back on the floor. Oh no. And then after 5 or 6 times of that, you quit. So every time I've had to reset, I had 2, 3, 4 years of success in between. So it's like, well, this sucks, but I've done it 5 other times already. I'll do it again. But if you never hit that successful mark, I could see that being really demoralizing. So having a plan and something that's going to drive you forward, and that this is my purpose in life, I'm not going to quit. Those are the things that I think you have to put together to actually push through those barriers.
Yeah, and learn to trick yourself.
Yeah, because they're real barriers.
Yeah.
And there is something to, like, I don't think positive self-talk is woo-woo shit. I think it does that thing we talked about with perception. It narrows you in on perceiving the thing that you need to perceive so that you can see the tools and the friends and the obstacles and the adversaries that are going to be the things that you have to use to get to where you're going. And if you don't have that, then you start getting off track.
This is the last question.
Yeah. Go for it.
I was also going to add to that too. Every time you do pull something off and you actually do hit one of these accomplishments, the next time you're getting your ass kicked, you can always look back and that as a reference. Like, hey, I just did something crazy.
Yeah.
I can do it again. And it's like, your past success can propel you in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a lot like learning to be uncomfortable, right? So if you do something that, like, go work out for the first time, and you go and you're like, hey, January 1st, New Year's resolution, I'm going to start working out. And you go to the gym and you work out way too hard because you haven't worked out ever. And now you're so sore for 2 weeks, you can barely walk, and you get demoralized, right? But if you do it right and you build yourself up in working out, you can go to the gym, you can do the hardest workout you've ever done. You can be sore and you're like, yeah, this is normal. Right? So the pain and the discomfort and the struggle and the effort can become normal if you make them normal. But if you are always seeking that comfort and you've never gone through any hardships before, those hardships seem really hard. Like, being in the Army and deploying, we live in an RV for a year. I'm like, this is luxury. My wife is a trooper. She's like, I've never lived in an RV for a year. Well, welcome to our life right now. We're building a house, but we're living in an RV for a year. And so all of that it's just perception, right? It's, have you ever gone through hardship before? Well, welcome to the club now. You're going through it now, and embrace it. Embrace the suck, as we say in the Army. And then the next time you can do something a little harder, and the next time you can do something a little harder. And not only can you do things that are harder, but they feel less hard as you continue to push through and to go through those things. Yeah, really good.
Thanks, Phil.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
There's all sorts of demos that are starting on different schedules down at The hauler. Somebody can do it if you want. I don't know when John put me on.
I'll just grab it here.
Demos. Have you just been doing it?
We did it, yeah.
Okay, you did it. Okay.
Try not to whack anybody.
Joel has dogs. And
I do have dogs. Is that what we're?
demos are fun if it's not pouring down rain.
Yeah. So we'll see about finding a place, and I can,
Yeah.
and we can do some tomorrow as well.
Yeah, tomorrow will be better for that.
Okay.
Weather-wise. No, I mean, like, do them today, but weather-wise, it looks like it's not going to be raining.
Okay. Cool.
I don't, yeah. Definitely doesn't rain.
So I do a lot of
Yes,
scuba
I
diving
agree.
and swimming in open water, and I'm always wondering about being attacked. So can you recommend like an underwater knife fighting course?
I know, right? So you can fight the sharks off
No,
when they come in.
like I could get mugged while being underwater.
That's true.